You're at a park and there's a stray dog wandering around sniffing at everyone. It ignores the guy jogging, ignores the kids running past, ignores the woman eating a sandwich 2 feet away, and then walks straight up to you, sits down, and just stays. Your friend looks at you and says, "Animals just like you," and you laugh it off, but some tiny part of you wonders, why me? What did that dog actually see? Because it's not random. Dogs, cats, even wild birds seem to zero in on certain people and ignore everyone else in the room. So what is it exactly that makes an animal choose a person? The answer isn't magic, and it isn't really about being an animal person either. It's something far more measurable and honestly a little humbling. Let's start by clearing up the biggest myth, because most people think this comes down to smell or energy or some vague spiritual thing. It doesn't. Animals aren't reading your aura. They're reading your behavior, in real time, with a level of precision most humans don't even apply to other humans. Researchers studying dog cognition, including work out of Eötvös Loránd University in Hungary, have found that dogs are exceptionally skilled at reading human body language, gaze direction, and pointing gestures, often outperforming even chimpanzees on tasks that require understanding what a human is trying to communicate. A 2003 study by Brian Hare and colleagues found that dogs could follow human pointing cues to find hidden food almost immediately, while wolves raised in nearly identical conditions couldn't do it nearly as well. In other words, dogs didn't just learn to tolerate us. Somewhere in the last 15,000 years, they evolved to specifically study us, like we're a subject on a test they've been quietly acing for millennia. But here's where it gets strange. If animals are reading behavior, then the obvious next question is, what behavior exactly makes them pick one person out of a crowd? And the answer is almost embarrassingly simple: calm, low, predictable energy. Animal behaviorists have long noted that most animals, prey species especially, are constantly scanning for threat signals: sudden movement, direct staring, loud unpredictable noise, tension and posture. A person who moves slowly, avoids direct prolonged eye contact, and speaks in a low, even tone is, from an animal's threat detection system, basically broadcasting, "I am not a problem." Meanwhile, the overly excited person, the one lunging in with a high-pitched, "Hi, baby," and both hands out, is accidentally sending every signal a nervous system evolved to associate with danger. So it's not that animals dislike enthusiasm. It's that enthusiasm to a prey brain can look a lot like a predator winding up. Now here's the part nobody talks about. This isn't just about posture and volume. Animals are also picking up on something you can't consciously control, and that's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Multiple studies on interspecies bonding, including research on horse-human interaction published in the journal Animals, have found that horses show measurable physiological synchronization with calm handlers. Their heart rates actually begin to mirror the heart rate of a relaxed human nearby. A tense human, even one who's smiling and saying all the right words, produces subtle cues: shallow breathing, muscle tension, micro shifts in posture that many animals detect faster than they process the words being said. Dogs have been shown in multiple studies to distinguish human emotional states from facial expressions and vocal tone with startling accuracy. So when someone says an animal can tell if you're scared, they're not entirely wrong. The animal isn't reading your mind. It's reading your nervous system, and your nervous system is a lot less private than you think it is. But wait, what about the classic exception? The person who's loud, chaotic, talks with their hands constantly, and somehow every dog in the neighborhood still adores them? Doesn't that completely break this whole calm energy theory? Not quite. And this is where the picture gets more interesting instead of less. Consistency matters just as much as calmness. Animals, especially dogs, thrive on predictability, and a person who is reliably, consistently loud and expressive in the same way every single time is actually easier for an animal to read than someone who's unpredictable. Sometimes affectionate, sometimes irritated, sometimes ignoring them entirely. Predictability, even a loud, chaotic kind, still equals safety, because the animal always knows what's coming next. It's not really calm energy that wins. It's readable energy. The animals aren't rejecting excitement, they're rejecting uncertainty. And that distinction opens up something even bigger. Because it means this whole phenomenon isn't really about being liked by animals at all. It's about being legible to them. A dog trusts the hand that moves the same way every time it reaches out. A horse trusts the voice that stays level whether the news is good or bad. A cat trusts the person who lets it approach, instead of the one who always approaches first. None of these animals are choosing kindness exactly. They're choosing patterns they can predict, patterns that have never once betrayed them, patterns built slowly, repetition by repetition, until trust stops being a feeling and just becomes a fact they've tested and confirmed. That's really the emotional core of the whole thing. It's not that certain people have some magical gift. It's that certain people, often without realizing it, behave like something safe to predict, and animals, who cannot afford to guess wrong about safety, notice that faster than almost anything else about us. Think about how differently that compares to how humans size each other up. We're swayed by charisma, by confident jokes, by a firm handshake and good eye contact, even when those signals are frankly easy to fake. Animals mostly ignore all of that. They don't care how funny you are or how good your handshake is. They're running a much older, much harder to fool assessment. Is this creature's behavior consistent? Is their energy regulated? Are they going to do something unpredictable in the next 10 seconds? It's a little humbling to realize the family dog might be a more accurate judge of your actual internal state on a stressful day than most of your coworkers. Now, it's worth being honest here, because this isn't some universal law where every calm person becomes an animal magnet and every anxious person gets ignored by every creature on Earth. Individual animal temperament matters enormously. A dog that was poorly socialized as a puppy, or a rescue animal with a history of trauma may react fearfully to calm strangers and comfortably to louder ones, simply because their personal history rewired what safe means to them. Species differences matter too. Cats respond heavily to scent and territorial cues in ways dogs largely don't, and wild animals operate on almost entirely different risk calculations than domesticated ones that have spent generations around humans. Research on animal personality, including work by biologist Sam Gosling, has found that individual animals, not just species, show consistent, measurable personality traits, meaning there's no single formula that guarantees every animal will gravitate toward you the same way. But even with all those exceptions, the underlying mechanism holds up surprisingly well across species. Animals are extraordinarily good at detecting authenticity, because faking calm is actually very hard to sustain physically. You can control your voice for a few minutes. It's much harder to control your breathing rate, your microtension, the almost invisible hesitations in your movement for the entire length of an interaction, which means the people animals seem to choose aren't usually performing calmness for the animal's benefit. They're often just people who are, in that moment or as a general disposition, less internally chaotic than everyone else in the room. And the animal is simply the first one honest enough to notice and react accordingly, without any social pressure to pretend otherwise. So no, it's not really about being an animal person in some mystical sense, and it's definitely not about smelling right or having some invisible spiritual pull that other people lack. It's about broadcasting, often completely unconsciously, a nervous system an animal can read, predict, and trust, moment to moment, gesture to gesture, breath to breath. Animals aren't judging your personality. They're judging your pattern. And patterns, unlike personalities, are things you can actually notice and change once you know they're being watched that closely in the first place. Now think back to that stray dog in the park, walking past a jogger, past two kids, past a woman with a sandwich, straight up to you. It probably wasn't random, and it probably wasn't magic either. It read something in the way you were standing, the way your shoulders sat, the pace of your breathing, the absence of tension in your voice before you'd even said a single word. And it made a calculation animals have been making about humans for longer than written language has existed. Is this one safe? Maybe the compliment was never animals just like you. Maybe it was closer to, you're one of the rare humans whose insides match your outsides enough for another creature to actually trust it. That's not a small thing. That's a nervous system passing an exam most of us don't even know we're taking. We didn't lose the ability to be read by animals. We just got better at hiding the truth from other humans.